They didn't know where they was going, but they knew where they wasn't it. We are everyday robots on our phones, in the process of getting home, looking like standing stones, out there on our own. We're everyday robots in control, process of getting sold, driving in adjacent cars till we press restart. Just touch thumbs, swimming in a lingo they become, drifting in a status sea, one more vacancy, for everyday robots getting old. When our lips are cold, sitting like standing stones, out there on our own. Little robots in ring-like tones, in the process of getting home. So good morning. Good morning. I'm sure you all have musicians that don't just keep you entertained on a pure entertainment value basis, but they also deeply inspire your soul and your intellect as well as your ethics. And for me, that musician, at least if we're going by modern day musicians, would have to be none other than the person who wrote that song, Everyday Robots, Damon Albarn. Now, in my opinion, Damon Albarn is one of the true modern-day Renaissance musicians simply because he has undergone such a wide variety of musical projects throughout the last 3 decades that he's been performing. And I also think his political and spiritual beliefs implied throughout said music very much mirror the UU philosophies that are near and dear to my heart. Now, how I'll construct this is I will discuss his upbringing and what led to his different highs and lows throughout his career, and what inspired some of his spiritual beliefs and politics, and then I will dissect some of his songs that speak most profoundly to me and see what can be implied from there, and then I will go to what he's actually said about his own beliefs. And by the end of that, I will have one more song for you. So first, let's start with his upbringing. Damon Albarn was born on March 23rd, 1968 in Whitechapel, London, to Keith and Hazel Albarn. His parents were Quakers. The former was an artist, and the latter is a theatrical set designer. They raised Albarn very uniquely. You see, they listened to old blues, Indian ragas, and African music. And they were also heavily involved in London's bohemian counterculture. In fact, they even took Damon to visit Turkey at age 9 before they moved to Leystone, Essex. And Essex was, at least from Damon's perspective, a very socially troubling place. He was often made fun of and was the weird kid in his town because he grew up around so much culture and diversity in his parents' sense of art and music, whereas everyone in Essex was overall very white and conservative. And he had trouble adjusting at first, but he learned to play piano, violin, and guitar in primary school, and that's there where he met his lifelong friend Graham Coxon, who I will later reveal eventually became the guitarist for his first major band, Blur. Later on, at age 15, he won the Regional Young Composer Competition of the Year, and he then worked as a mime and a T-boy. And after that, he attended Goldsmith College, and for a while he played in several small indie bands, but in 1989, everything changed for him when he formed the Britpop band Blur with his friend Coxon, Alex James on the bass, and David Roundtree on drums, with Albarn being the frontman. Just to let you know, Albarn has been the frontman of every group he's been in. So they released their debut album Leisure in 1991, and then they gained major success after their 1994 release of Park Life. And after that, publicity increased towards them greatly with this media-induced feud between another popular Oasis band you may know for their song Wonderwall, Oasis. Personally, I cannot stand Oasis because the Gallaghers have, in the past, berated Albarn and company to the point that they just loved all the publicity they got. And this all started when their songs Country House and Roll With It respectively released on the same day, so they were competing for #1 spots on the UK charts. So that gave Albarn a lot of attention, and as someone who was kind of introverted, and he had trouble adjusting to that. And so after that, Blur remained pretty dormant until the release of 2004's Think Tank, which was very experimental. As for why, I will get to that very shortly. And then they took a hiatus until 2012's The Magic Whip, and since then they have not released any new material. So as for his relationships, he had a very public and open relationship with singer Justin Frischman, and then in 1998 he dabbled in a relationship with Shazney Lewis. But with Frischman, that's where some of his life started to really decline, because she introduced him to his heroin addiction. And with heroin, he said that it did make him more productive, but he felt even more isolated as a result of taking it, especially at the height of his fame. And it did inspire quite a bit of his music with Blur, and he even has one song where he discusses his addiction called Beetlebum. But like I said, later on when I get to more specific songs, I will discuss that in greater detail. So back to his relationships, he started to get his life back together when he met artist Susie Wistonley in 1998. And she was a traveler, and traveling to Africa served as a sort of rehabilitation for him spiritually. And he had a daughter with her, Missy, in 1999. So he continued traveling to Africa very often. He met some musicians he would later collaborate with, like the drummer Tony Allen. And particularly, he loved going to Mali. And in 2000, that was the first time he visited that in support of Oxfam. Now, Oxfam is this organization that supports aid to third world countries in Africa, just for context. So, as a result, he collaborated with Malian artists to release Mali music, where it's this album where each song highlights a very underappreciated North African musician. and brings attention to them to the rest of the world. So later on in 2005, he was inspired to help found Africa Express, which is this organization that gives further attention to African musicians who are in need. So let's backtrack a little bit, because by the time that Damon was getting over his heroin addiction, he started to want to experiment with music. And his roommate, Jamie Hewlett, it was a comic book artist who you may know created Tank Girl. And they were sitting at home one day watching the telly, and they saw MTV come on. And they were very disappointed with the culture presented on MTV. They thought it was oversaturated celebrity nonsense, so they thought, hey, we can satirize this. I can use your zany art skills, and I can use my music to create a project where we have these cartoon characters that are caricatures of celebrities to satirize them, and at the same time make some pretty good jams. So in 1998, they formed probably the most successful virtual band to date, Gorillaz. So Gorillaz released their self-titled album in 2001, and in the following year they were named the most successful virtual band in the Guinness World Records. And then their sophomore album, Demon Days, went double platinum and won the Best Pop Collaboration with Vocals for its lead single, Feel Good Inc. in 2006 with their collaborator De La Soul. So after this newfound success with Gorillaz, where he decided to dabble in multiple genres, because if you ask someone what genre Gorillaz is, all you can say is, well, yes. Because with each Gorillaz song, there is not one distinctive genre. They will dabble in hip-hop, trip-hop, reggae, sometimes hard rock, sometimes folk rock, sometimes pop. They try to encompass all genres in order to really satirize the celebrity lifestyle. So they also have a diverse set of collaborators from all walks of life, and I will discuss those later on as well. So after this success, he decided to form a supergroup with Paul Simonon, who you might know as the bass player for The Clash on bass, Simon Tong on guitar, and his friend he met in Africa, Tony Allen, on the drums. And this was called The Good, the Bad, and the Queen. And he used this group to primarily bring social commentary on the state of Britain to attention at the time. And this is when his music started to become much more political. So they released their self-titled album in 2007, and their sophomore album, Maryland, just last year in 2018. So then he formed one more small supergroup called Rocket Juice and the Moon in 2008. And this was with Flea of Red Hot Chili Peppers on bass, and Tony Allen, once again, on drums. And he decided to do another collaboration with Hewlett outside of Gorillaz that same year, as well as with theatrical director Shen Shizing in 2008 play Monkey Journey to the West, which received an animation as an intro to the Beijing Olympics. And since then, he has collaborated to a multitude of soundtracks for film and theater, including the film Trainspotting, which, interestingly enough, deals with characters dealing with heroin addiction, Dr. D, and Wonder.Land, which is a futuristic interpretation of Alice in Wonderland that focuses on social media and smartphone addiction. That, as you can tell by the song I just played, Damon Albarn finds very fascinating. And in 2016, probably the most impressive title he received was Officer of British Empire during the Queen's New Year's honors. So now I will focus on the songs that I think have the most profound impact on me, as well as communicate Damon's spirituality and political influences the most. And I'll start with Blur here. So their most famous song is Song 2, which you might know as the Woohoo song, because the chorus just goes, Woohoo! And what's very ironic about this one is that Blur's general overarching theme is commenting on social norms and challenging those. And what's ironic about this one is Song 2 even though they're a Britpop band, they're satirizing American culture at the time. And American culture during the early to mid-90s was very much into grunge and very much into like making this facade, I guess, of being cool. That's the impression that they got. So the main line for song 2 is, when I feel heavy metal and I'm pins and I'm needles. Well, I lie and I'm easy all of the time, but I'm never sure why I need you. Pleased to meet you. So we have from these lines this, I guess you could say, sense of confusion Damon and company have towards American culture, and that's how they're expressing that. And what's so ironic about the song is in America it became a huge hit, and people thought it was a grunge song, when really it's parodying the grunge lifestyle, really. And you could argue that I'm Pins and I'm Needles could also contribute to the overarching theme of the album which the song is from, their self-titled 1997 album, Blur, which does discuss Albarn's heroin addiction very heavily. But going back a couple years, there is the song Park Life, which does demonstrate very much a lot of satirization of British culture. And so the song Park Life goes through this narration about someone's typical day in a British park, and the chorus goes, all the people, so many people, and they all go hand in hand through their park life. So at this time, Damon and company saw British culture as very monotone and droll and just going on with day-to-day life with not much consequence, really. So the consequence would come much later through the rapid technological advancement we began to see in the late 90s and the song The Universal, where Damon's fear of technological growth, in a sense, was really foreshadowed. So this song, The Universal, is about a dystopia where the future's been sold. And it goes, this is the next century where the universal's free. You can find it anywhere. Yes, the future's been sold. Every night we're gone, and to karaoke songs, how we like to sing along, though the words are wrong. So we have these lines suggesting here that just like in park life, people tend to go on with social norms with little question. But in this case, we're introducing technological growth, which is causing them to be even more gullible, and which worries Damon very much to this day, as I will discuss much later. And so then, now that we've discussed a lot of Blur's major themes and songs, we'll get to Gorillaz' early work, and with them beginning and starting out with satirizing celebrity culture. So I feel like the song that encapsulates this the best is New Genius Brother. And the lines that I've picked that resonate with me the most are, brother, sister too, do what you must do, don't trust people you meet. They might promise you that the river ain't deep. So you could perceive the river as being all sorts of entertainment venues, from Hollywood to the music industry. You never know who's going to take advantage of you in these scenarios. So as a celebrity, Damon would definitely understand, and that's what he's trying to communicate through this. Now, what's really interesting about the first Gorillaz album is that it was released before 9/11, and 9/11 really shook Damon and Jamie. In fact, they have an entire song called 9/11 where they collaborate with D12, the hip-hop group, and talk about how they were away from America while that all happened and how they experienced that. And so they became very much more aware of politics and the world around them. So Demon Days tries to take down a lot of the political events that were going on in the world. There's one song in there called Kids with Guns, where Damon is commenting on one day when his daughter Missy told him that a kid at her school got in trouble for bringing a knife to school. And so that's how he was bringing light to school shootings and the like. And that's also where we start to see his attention drift towards climate change as well. So we have the song, "Oh Green World," and what really resonated with me were the lines, "Oh green world, don't desert me now. I'm made of you, and you of me. But where are we? Oh no." So here we have Damon's fear begins to escalate very much, especially through the characters that he's portraying in the gorillas. And so on one hand, the gorillas are telling this story, this zany little cartoon story about like going through an apocalypse in a sense, and Damon is using that apocalypse to relate it to the real world. And because in fiction, you can see the real dangers of what's really creeping and what's wrong with society, and it's much more apparent that way. So when it really hits you that that's how reality is, it's terrifying. And so that song shows that as well. But I think what really encapsulates it is fire coming out of the monkey's head. Now this was a song with narration from Dennis Hopper, very excellent actor, I might add. So, and he describes this little short story that Damon wrote to relate to the Bush administration and how they treated the Gulf War. And so in this little story, there's this little village of people known as happy folk. And happy folk live on this little mountain, and they worship the spirit known as Monkey. And one day, strange folk come, and they try to take advantage of the goods and materials in the village, although I think what he's trying to say is that they're taking advantage of the oil. And I think you would all know where the metaphor is going from here, except in the end, the mountain erupts. And so Dennis Hopper says the spirit of the monkey had spoken, and then there was nothing. And so after this, Damon's lines follow, "A little town in USA, the time has come to see. There's nothing you believe you want. But where were you when it all came down on me? Did you call me out?" So here we have Damon feeling really concerned for how the U.S.'s actions are impacting the rest of the world, and through metaphor and literal language, he's giving them admonishment to not overuse capitalism and greed, essentially. So then, after the success of Demon Days, there was the 2010 release of Plastic Beach, which is a complete evaluation of the harms of climate change. And I feel like the songs that best represent that are Pirate Jet. So Pirate Jet goes, "It's all good news now, because we left the taps running for 100 years. So drink into the drink, a plastic cup of drink. Drink with the purple people, the plastic-eating people, still connected to the moment it began." So here, I really find it interesting that he's calling people the purple people, as if to say they're becoming unnatural by taking advantage of the environment and using all these artificial alternatives to the natural world, and still connected to the moment began. You can interpret it as that we're still connected to nature no matter what. No matter what we do to the environment and how much we try to change it, we're still connected. So now we can go back to the Blur song Ice Cream Man, which was released from their 2012 album, The Magic Whip. And further going into more political discourse, Damon is commenting on the Tiananmen Square incident, so with some extended metaphors. So we have, "Here comes the ice cream man, parked to the end of the road. With a swish of his magic whip, all the people in the party froze. I was only 21 when I watched it on TV. I was racing in my heart back then. Something new, something you do nothing about." So I guess you could say that Damon and company are very infuriated with China, most definitely, for letting this tragedy go under the rug. And he was even commenting on when he was younger, and he recalls seeing it on television. So I think this is a very good way to bring younger people's attention to the past and how we cannot repeat it. So now going on to The Good, the Bad, and the Queen, we have a very recent song from them for their album Maryland, Gun to the Head, which very directly focuses on British politics because Damon was very upset with Brexit. So we have the lines, "Notice hereby given that spring guns and man traps to be placed on these premises, so don't trespass over the line on the map." So that line, you could say, is a very direct reference to UK breaking out of the European Union. Commissioners for oaths in the borough of Banbury, which is a small town in London, require the owners of rowdy dogs to keep them on their leads. We don't care because we're all animal lovers. We like to share our lives with them. Required of this song is a case for love when everything else that keeps us together is conspiring to tear us apart. Now that mindset is very much what is dividing people in Europe currently, especially in Scotland and Ireland, on how to deal with the Brexit issue. And into Damon and company, it is very much a crisis that is tearing apart the people. And Damon is a huge supporter of unity in general, so that's what he's calling towards. Now, I guess it would be a good time to discuss his solo work. Now, Damon in 2014 released his only solo album, Everyday Robots, which I played a song for you. He discusses some political and social themes there, but there is one very joking, cheerful song, Mr. Tembo. So this goes, Injili, can I sing with you about Mr. Tembo and what he's got to do? But first I'm going back to Colworth Road to find the mission and help him with his load. Mr. Tembo is on his way up the hill with only his song to tell you how he feels. But to get there, he will need a helping hand. It's where he is now, but it wasn't what he planned. It's where he is now, but it wasn't what he planned. So what is Mr. Tembo about exactly? Well, it's an ode to an elephant that he met in Tanzania. In Swahili, Tembo means elephant. And discussing his inspiration for the song, Damon says, "The guys who look after him are all very religious. The elephant has grown up with gospel music, so if he ever hears the final song, I thought he'd like it." And Damon also says, "It touched me in my soul, I suspect, to sing this song to an elephant." So this goes to show how much of an impact traveling to Africa that it has had on his life and helping him grow as a person. So as for another positive song, I guess we could also go to We Got the Power from the 2017 Gorillaz album Humans. Now prefacing this, Humans has some very dark themes, and one of them is the fear of social isolation, which was previously mentioned in Everyday Robots, resulting from technology addiction, but also resulting from divisions in political parties, especially in the U.S. Now, the music video for one of these songs, which is discussed, is this Hallelujah Money, which was collaborated with Benjamin Clementine, was released the night before Trump's inauguration. So there is very much some obvious commentary there. But it has the line, "When the morning comes, we are still humans. How will we know? How will we dream? How will we love?" So there's Damon's constant fear and anxiety arising. But in this final track, we have a little glimmer of hope from We Got the Power. Get yourself up the silent altar and call me, but don't forget the machines. Because if your choice is chipping it down on the M1, the M1A1 is a road in the UK, then you wake up in the morning, you'll be storming. Oh, we got the power to be loving each other no matter what happens. We got the power to do that. We got the power to be ringing the great bell out there above us. We got the power for that. So this is essentially a protest song where Damon is even considering that technology can have a positive impact in bringing people together to advocate for social justice and social change. So I previously stated that I feel like Damon really represents UU philosophies in his music, and I feel like, especially with Gorillaz, he really does. by including such a diverse set of collaborative artists. And he has Spanish artists like Abraham Ferrer, who passed away in 2001. He has had Chinese artists, like on the track Hong Kong. He has had the Syrian National Orchestra, who he took great effort in reassembling after the civil war in Syria broke them apart in 2011. They collaborated with him on Plastic Beach. And going to the principle which allows for a fair search and truth of meaning, he includes two different viewpoints on President Obama on the album Humans, with rapper Vince Staples having an anti-establishment look on Obama, and then Pusha T on the song Let Me Out being very anxious and very afraid that Obama was leaving the administration. Now let's get to some direct social change that he's done. So in 2002, he took out full-page advertisements in the NME magazine challenging the need for war. And he paid personally for these ads. And then in 2005, Albarn criticized the London Live 8 concert for not featuring enough black artists. And as a result, they added several artists like Mrs. Dynamite and Snoop Dogg. And so there is some more direct examples of his contributions to social justice. Now let's get to direct examples of his contributions to his spiritual viewpoint. So, as I said, his parents were Quakers, so he was raised a Christian. And he says on his parents, "I always thought my parents were absolutely dead right. I went against the grain in a weird way by continually following them." And to further discuss if he is spiritual, he says, "I couldn't feel music or write those words if I wasn't. I don't follow any orthodoxy, but I believe in the Spirit, I really do. Everyone is magic and everyone is equally magical. It's not given to particular people, it's something we all have." And he also says, going back to the musical that he wrote for Dr. Dee, which is about Dr. John Dee, who was a mathematician in the 16th century and advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, "I relate a lot to the ideas that John Dee explored. I'm not a mathematician or chemist by any stretch of the imagination, but the idea of being informed by a spiritual influence, that's very important to me. Not a specific religion, I'm not God Squad, just the idea of there being an overarching force." And he further says, "I've always been interested in religion and the history of spirituality, but it's not just a Christian moral, you know. I'm interested in all religions. I love history and I love the history of religion. Religion, in its purest, most esoteric sense, travels the same path as mathematics and physics and music. If you're interested in music, it's a great hub from which a hell of a lot of other stuff can be investigated." So, as we've seen before in his music, Damon has become less spiritual and more political, but he still overall has a very strong spiritual sense that has been highlighted by his trips to Africa, that have made him feel definitely at peace. And in a lot of his songs, he's said, he's talked to God, he's talked about praying, he says, "Oh Lord, forgive me." And even in Andromeda, it's suggested that he does believe in an afterlife, because it's dedicated to the loss of his mother-in-law, Ethel. And so the song is about him looking up at the stars and seeing all those that he's lost, such as collaborator Bobby Womack as well. So Damon Albarn's spiritual connections aren't exactly obvious, but now that they've been stated, they definitely make a lot of sense. And I feel like they definitely accentuate some Unitarian Universalist principles, even if he isn't Unitarian Universalist. Now, it looks like since we are almost out of time, I would like to play one more song for you that does suggest a glimmer of hope among the darkness, which I feel like Damon Albarn does beautifully. And this is a song that he did following fire coming out of the monkey's head. and it's called "Don't Get Lost in Heaven" in Demon Days.
What's it called again?
Don't get lost in heaven in Demon Days.
To the sun.
to the sun.